Welcome to this episode of the Holistic Woman podcast with your guide, Kate Payne. I have today the lovely Gemma Benad. Gemma is the founder of the Body-Led Body Method, which is a transformative approach for ambitious and driven female entrepreneurs. Gemma is committed to guiding individuals on the journey towards owning their true power, personal expansion, and next level business success whilst honoring their bodies. She helps her clients harness the power of mind, body, and business using her signature-led business method, which integrates nervous system strengthening, subconscious mindset reprogramming, human design, gene keys, and body-led business strategies for a comprehensive and innovative approach to scaling sustainable business that makes a positive change in the world. Her mission is to support those on the path to 7 figures and beyond to unleash their authentic power, align with their energetic blueprint, and build an empire that impacts the world and honors their bodies. She's the host of the wildly popular podcast, the Success Revolution podcast, a rapid transformational therapy practitioner, a neurological fitness trainer, human design embodiment coach, and multiple 6-figure leader with over 16 years of entrepreneurial experience, as well as a loving mother to 5 babes and adoring wife. Her vision for women's wellness is for women to honor their bodies, signals, and tap into the innate wisdom she has to offer to guide us towards wholeness. Gemma, after that phenomenal introduction, welcome.
You.
How wild is it when we hear ourselves being introduced? Isn't it crazy?
Actually, it's almost a little bit of a full circle moment, I think. Like, as you mentioned in that intro, 16 years I've been in business for myself, and I've done a lot in that time, as you would expect, of 16 years as well.
Yeah.
And I think when it gets encapsulated down into a few paragraphs, and it really gives like a chance to just, I don't know, pause for a moment and be like, wow, okay, yeah. Like, not only is what I have done incredible, but what I am building, yeah, like hearing that back is just, yeah, my sacral is like, oh, that feels so nice. That feels so nice to hear that back. But yeah, that was a really beautiful introduction and a beautiful way to kind of reflect and take pause for a moment and even just celebrate, yeah, the journey. Amazing.
And it's important, isn't it? Because as women, we often don't take that time to pause
No,
and reflect and
no.
acknowledge how far we've come or how much we're holding at any given time or what we've
Mm,
achieved. And we're just constantly, and I think society really breeds that continual visioning for the future and not allowing for women to come into those moments of presence and pause and really acknowledge, accept, and celebrate where we're at.
yeah, I could not agree with you more at all. And that's one of the things that I'm so deeply passionate about when I serve the women that I work with in business, is really bringing them back into this present moment to meet all of themselves where they're at right now.
Mm.
And I obviously talk in the context of business and a lot of the work I do, but really what I'm doing is helping women come back to themselves. And part of that expression of themselves too is through their business.
Yeah.
But we really do live in a very fast-paced society. It's not slowing. Well, I was going to say it's not slowing down anytime soon, but I think we're going to I think we're on the trajectory to a precipice, and we're going to hit the other side of the curve.
Mm.
I think people are craving a much different pace, in whether that's business or life or relationship or whatever it is. And I think we are going to be slowing down. But right now, as it is, we really revere speed. We really revere the constant of going and the constant of growth as well.
Mm.
And growth is beautiful, but growth is beautiful when we also have periods of pause and periods
Mm.
of, like, I think of them as periods of calibration where we adjust.
Mm.
But so much, I think, can be said for coming back and meeting ourselves where we're at, and taking that moment of pause and reflection. And even if it's not reflection, even just that moment of pause and that moment of presence is so important for us as women. I think for us as human beings, but we're obviously talking in the context of women.
Mm.
And I know the older I get, the more I crave that, the more I prioritize that. the more I desire that, the more that's what I really just, I guess, in some respects, put on a pedestal over anything else. I really want that. And I'm in the midst right now, like you are, of school holidays with my children.
Mm,
And I think school holidays really are a beautiful time for us to pause, because in some respects we're forced to slow down. We are forced,
mm,
and it's beautiful. And I was really feeling into that this morning when I woke up, and I lay in bed for a little while and did a meditation. And then I thought, I'm just going to get up and have a cup of tea and sit on the lounge and just pat my little fluffy puppy dog and just be in the moment. And it was really beautiful. It was so
mm,
nice to just have that little micro moment. Was really, really nourishing for my nervous system, for my
mm.
soul, and for my day as well.
Mm, beautiful. Well, I'd love to begin by having you share which season you're currently in. We know you're a mother, so we know you've moved through, many
Oh,
seasons
yeah.
of to five, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
let's begin by having you share what season you're in and how are you celebrating that as you transition into the next one?
Oh, gosh. It's so interesting you ask about the celebration. So I'll tell, I'm currently in menstruation, but I am, without a doubt, I'm 42. I'm definitely coming towards the late stages and heading into perimenopause.
Mm,
Actually, before my last bleed, which was a couple of weeks ago, I actually went through an experience where I thought, oh my God, I thought I'm actually in this, or really, I'm touching the edges of perimenopause here, because
mm,
I was experiencing some symptoms, as well as, um, my period. I had some spotting in my bleed, but it hadn't actually come. And I thought,
mm.
yeah, and I was having some other symptoms too throughout the course of one night. I actually woke up in the middle of the night and I was thinking of you. I was actually thinking of you, because I was like, oh, I think I really, and I did spend a little bit of time on the internet doing some Googling at some of the symptoms to try and understand, really, is this me coming towards really the finality of my menstruation and moving into perimenopause?
Mm,
And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I was wide awake. And in that moment, I thought, you know what, this could be it. This really could be this stage where I am moving into this next season, as you call it.
mm,
And it was such a beautiful moment that I had with myself, because I actually got back into bed, because I was sitting up at that point. I got back into bed and I lay down and I just put my hands over my womb space and I just connected in, and I just was so grateful. Actually makes me feel emotional
mm,
right now. I was just felt such immense gratitude for that season, such
mm,
immense gratitude for everything that I had gone through, the birth of my beautiful children. Twins are a part of that mixture. So my incredible body was able to house two healthy, beautiful baby boys.
mm,
And I had the privilege of being able to give birth vaginally as well. And I just felt this immense gratitude. And I don't know if I really think about, because obviously the menstruation season is such a long season for us
mm,
women, and I was absolutely not brought up in an environment where this phase was celebrated. It was always an inconvenience.
mm,
Even with my girlfriends, we never really spoke about it in a way that ever really celebrated all that menstruation, the gift that menstruation gives to us women. And so it was so lovely to have that moment where I just really thought and felt just this immense appreciation to my body, and what it's been able to give me and hold and carry and allow me to experience over this season.
mm.
So yeah, it's the first time really that I've allowed myself to really experience that level of gratitude for that season, because so much conditioning. I had so much conditioning. Around around the bleed, and I still remember when I first learnt that I was going to bleed,
Mm,
and I learnt through my mother's best friend's daughter,
mm,
as you do. And she told me, and I remember just absolutely freaking out, thinking this is going to be the worst thing ever. And I think that really set the stage for what
yeah.
a lot of that season was about. So it was really lovely to come to the end at this age right now and to be able to see that experience and this season through a very different lens. And also, I've got, I've got two girls. So my stepdaughter, who is 16, and then my daughter. And so it's been lovely to also feel this way about this season so that I can
Mm.
have those conversations with my girls in a very different way as well.
Mm. Absolutely. And do you think your understanding now and your work with the nervous system has really allowed you to connect in with these seasons through a completely different lens? Because
Yes.
obviously the introduction to menstruation was one that has a lot of story attached to it and a lot of imprints on the nervous system and the energy body. And so I wonder if you can speak to how this I guess fresh eyes or new lens that you're able to apply to this season with this, robust knowledge bank of the nervous system that you have.
I think it just, for me, there is this greater sense of allowance of flow, I think, more than anything else.
Mm.
Being able to understand how my nervous system works, being able to know how to nurture as well. I think, the key for me has always been the shift into compassion, self-compassion, self-understanding, and this ability to just be able to really allow my body to experience what it's experiencing without there being this overlay of judgment or
Mm.
feeling like there's something wrong or anything like that. I think that's just the biggest shift when it comes to, for me, with the nervous system and my experience of the seasons. And that the story that I was telling about where just before my last bleed, where I thought maybe I was going into perimenopause, historically, because of so many of the narratives that I think society peddles and pushes
Mm.
about perimenopause and about menopause as well. And it's very easy to want to resist that next transition. It's very easy to feel fearful of that next
Mm.
transition. And I know for me, being able to meet my body in whatever experience it's having, whether I am into perimenopause now or whether it comes in whenever, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Now I'm able to, like, it's just this word flow that comes up. Now I'm able to meet my body in whatever stage it's at and allow it to transition in its own way, in its own pace,
Mm.
in whichever way it wants. And I think that, for me anyway, personally, can only come from the level of compassion and self-compassion that really comes from knowing how to work with my nervous system.
Mm.
Because a nervous system that's in a stress state is always going to be in resistance to
Mm.
what is. And a
Mm.
nervous system that's in a dominant ventral vagal state always practices self-compassion, is
Mm.
always able to really just meet without judgment, to be able to witness without control. And that piece, I think, is so important because I really do believe that we are having to come up against a lot of narratives
Mm.
that are out there around all of the seasons. I think all of the seasons have their own narratives, and I know that you would speak to that beautifully. But I can only speak to, obviously, the one in regards to menopause, and I think it's, again, like menstruation. I think for so many of us, it has been, the narrative is that it's an inconvenience. It's
Yeah.
something that we just need to pop a pill and wish away. It's something
Yeah.
that, we try to resist, yet what a gift it is. I just,
Mm.
yeah, that's the piece I think that really is unlocked, that ability to celebrate each season I've been through, even if it's just upon reflection, but also just to meet myself exactly where I'm at without feeling like I have to stop it or prevent it or control it or change it or anything like that. Let my body do what it's designed to do.
Mm.
And I've just got to get out of the way of it.
Mm. Yeah. And this is what I love about your work because you've taken this same concept of working with the body and being in relationship with the body and allowing for those moments of presence and pause and contemplation into the business world. And it's
Mm,
something that also equally has just as many narratives around it. What does success look like? You know, success
mm,
looks like this, and this. And what does busyness look like? It looks like this, and this, and productivity, and all of these pieces that just are leading to more overwhelm and more elevation
mm,
in women's nervous systems. And what you've been able to do is take this understanding of the nervous system and overlay it for female entrepreneurs to be able to cultivate business that feels ease filled, that is their version of success, and all of these pieces. So that is really at the core of your work, to support women to build these sustainable, successful businesses aligned with their nervous system. So I'd love for you firstly to speak to your own journey of how you've brought
mm.
in this knowledge of nervous system, like what we've just been speaking about through the lens of women's health, and now how you apply that same understanding to your business, because it hasn't always been that way for you.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's been a far cry from that, actually. And it took me getting to the point of burnout at the end of 2020 for me to start to explore my own definition of success,
Mm-hmm.
and to also then really start to cultivate my own version and vision of what that was going to look like, and not what it was going to look like, but also what it was going to feel like.
Mm.
And that is, I think, a very radical thought in the business world,
Mm.
in a world that is very masculinized. And there is just a beautiful space for, the masculine in the business world, without a doubt. But I really talk about this in the lens of, the era of feminine success. And it can't just be about notching up another achievement on our belt, making X amount of money, hitting these tangible goals. Those things are all beautiful and they have place. But where's the synergy of the feminine? Where is her part in this? And that's the piece that I got to at the end of 2020. I mean, as I said, 16 years in business. I've had a bricks and mortar business. I sold that 7 years ago, and then I transitioned into the online space. And I had quite rapid growth in the first 18 to 24 months. I went from zero to a multiple six-figure business in a very short space of time. And that was all done through chasing the very masculine, tangible metrics of money and sales. And again, those aspects are beautiful and important, but there has to be a counterbalance. There's got to be
Mm.
some harmony. And so when I decided to press pause, and it was November 2020, I was driving home with my husband after spending a beautiful weekend celebrating his birthday. And I really was at the peak of my business success. Uh, Money was, flooding in. I was selling anything everything was just happening in what you would term easy, right? It was
Mm.
happening easily,
Mm.
except I had reached capacity. I had reached my absolute limit. And my body had been giving me signals for a long time. But because I had a nervous system that was wired for momentum, it was, a strong addiction to dopamine.
Mm.
And I just was used to high levels of cortisol, high levels of stress, high levels of adrenaline and pressure. I didn't know what it was like to slow down, but my body was giving me signs that this was enough. And then I just had this moment where I turned to my husband in the car on the drive home from the city, and I just said to him, I'm just going to take some time off. I'm just going to take off until the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think I said I'm going to take off until the end of school holidays in
Mm-hmm.
January, and then I'm going to come back and I'll just get on with business. All the plans that I've got, we're just going to keep going. But as I slowed down and I felt myself probably exhale for the first time in more than 16 years, I mean, decades, really,
Mm.
I realized I actually didn't want to go back to that style of business anymore. I didn't want to go back. And it wasn't even that I didn't want to go back. To be honest with you, I couldn't. I just
Mm.
couldn't. I couldn't make the choice to go back. everything in my body, and there was no rationality to it really either. And I think I probably had many conversations with my very logical minded husband, and he was so supportive and still is, and so understanding, despite how probably hard it was for him to really truly understand why I would give up what I had created like that. He was so supportive, and still continues to be to this day. But there wasn't it wasn't very logical. I just knew my body was saying, no, this path, we can't go back now. Now we've got to find our way forward. And I, at that point in time, and this took a lot of soul searching, 2021, 2022 as well, was so much soul searching, so much of trying to understand and peel back all of the conditioning that told me that I had to be a certain version of myself in order to be successful. All of the conditioning that said success has to look like this. You've got to measure success this way. And 2021 was we'll speak frankly, was a very challenging year for me because my body was also carrying a lot of shame. It wanted to process a lot of shame through 2021, and it was coming up and intensified through this experience because I was looking around me at the online business world, and everybody was leaps and bounds growing. Everyone was focused on their biggest launch yet, their biggest, income month yet, their, all of these things. And here I was at home going, I don't want to subscribe to this anymore. I can't, and there was a lot of what's wrong with me? Like, this isn't like, why don't I want these things like I used to? Or not even why don't I want them, but why are they not fulfilling? Everyone else seems to be fulfilled. And it's interesting because now I know because I've had conversations, I'm seeing this as well, is that all of those people that were going through such exponential growth are now going through what I went through in 2021. Now they're like, I'm pausing, I'm taking time away. This isn't what I wanted. I've reached the pinnacle. It means nothing. But I had to process a lot of shame around that because it felt like everyone else around me was still moving, still going, still hustling, and I was sitting there going, I can't do this anymore. And that really led me on the journey towards really reconnecting back in with my body. I believe I've always had a deep connection with my body. I believe I lost it at a young age. I truly believe I lost it because of trauma. I lost my mother at the age of 10, and that was really the point that any connection to self was diverted to just pain. I just needed to avoid the pain that my body was holding through that loss. And so I lost that connection to myself at that point. But I came back in 2021, and I can still remember the moment where I woke up again. I was filled with a lot of anxiety through that year because there was so much uncertainty for me. I did not know what business was going to look like. I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I didn't know how it was going to look. I just knew that I couldn't go back. And that was a really uncertain period. And there was one night where I couldn't sleep, and I woke up, 1:30 in the morning, and I just heard in my ear, just get up and move your body. And I stood in our upstairs living area, just near our French doors, and the moonlight was just kind of coming in. And I just stood there and I put my hands on my body and I just let my body move me. And I didn't know at the time that I was actually regulating, that I was actually coming back into compassionate connection and meeting my body in the sensations that it was having, because I'd spent so much time up in my head, talking myself through things, trying to talk myself into different ways of being and thinking, and I hadn't given my body any attention. And it was in that moment that my alchemy method, which is a method that I teach for nervous system regulation, really was born in that moment where I came back into my body. And I realized at that point in time that any level of success that I was going to create from this point forward, the body had to lead the way. It had to lead. It had to have, it wasn't just going to have a seat at the table. It actually had to sit at the head of the table, and it needed to lead. And the journey from then until now is still continuing exploration of what that looks like, because there isn't a roadmap, I don't believe, for this. And I don't believe there's meant to be a roadmap. The roadmap exists in our body. It doesn't exist outside of ourselves. So it's just been that journey of learning that it's okay. It's okay for our bodies to have a say, and
Mm.
that our bodies, I truly believe our bodies carry so much wisdom. I know you know this, they just
Mm.
carry so much innate wisdom. And a lot of the time we see them as an inconvenience. We see
Mm.
our bodies' sick signals as an
Yeah.
inconvenience. As you know, I've been unwell this last week. I've had only my second ever bout of the flu. And instead of resisting all of this, and it's not to say there hasn't been times where I've, been like, oh, this feels uncomfortable.
Mm.
I've been able to just see that signal that my body is sending me for what it is and what it's asking of me, and and this cements to me again how important it is that we build businesses that support this, that support
Mm.
all of us, all of our bodies' signals. You talk about it in terms of seasons.
Mm.
I talk about it in terms of states. So, we've got to have a business that supports all of our states,
Mm.
supports us when we're upbeat and energized, and with impetus and momentum, and we can move. But also, let's support us through those periods as well, where we are going to feel drained and tired and overwhelmed. This is life. This is
Yeah.
life. We have multiple nervous system states for a reason, not to stay rigidly stuck and fixed in one state, but to let
Mm.
ourselves move with flexibility and fluidity through all of them. Yet what I have noticed and know to be true is that we do not set our businesses up to support all of the nervous system states. In
Mm.
fact, more often than not, we set our business up to support one nervous system state. And we also set our businesses up to support the best version of ourselves,
Mm.
usually only. And
Mm.
I'm deeply passionate about helping women set up businesses that support all of ourselves. Yes,
Yes.
the best version of us has a seat, but what about the worst version of us? The one
Yeah.
that gets cranky and overwhelmed and
Mm.
doesn't have the energy and doesn't feel passionate and driven. She exists too.
Mm.
So, why are we not building a business that allows her to receive,
Yes.
to put her work out into the world? And that really is what the body-led business method is all about, through the
Mm.
lens of, letting women move through their nervous systems, but also setting up businesses that support that as well.
Yeah, because as women, as you know, and we've both and all women have experienced, there are many versions of self, and being a woman in this human experience, we innately have all of these different versions of self, all of these different ways that our nervous system responds because we carry such feminine essence. We're born from the feminine and we're born into these female bodies. And so we carry
Mm-hmm.
that innate core seed of femininity that men don't carry. Yes, they have the feminine as well, but it's different to women. And we haven't grown up in a society and a culture that celebrates that unique seed of femininity. And what you've done so beautifully is apply that not just to building a sustainable life, but also building a sustainable business. And that sustainability is the seed of being able to navigate and move with wherever we're at as a woman and still find the success as we define it. So I wonder if you can talk about that sustainability a little bit more in that context.
Yeah, well, I think you said it so beautifully then. Sustainability is allowing ourselves to move through all of the facets of who we are. And so sustainability, I mean, the definition of sustainability in the context of business particularly, is the ability to be able to grow without causing other problems.
Mm.
And that's a very structured definition, but I lean on that because I think to myself that's exactly what I experienced for my business, and why I had to stop in 2020, because whilst I had built a business that was growing and had grown and would have continued to grow, it was causing problems in other areas of my life. And that was because the business was not set up to allow all facets of me to have a seat at the table and to be supported and to serve and to receive. And so for me, sustainability does not exist unless we can create the level of growth that we desire without it causing other problems, without it having a negative impact on our health, on our relationship with our significant partner, on our relationship with our children, friends, relationship to self. All of those things have got to be factored into it. So when I think about sustainability, all of us and all facets of who we are and all facets of our life have to come into the equation with business. We cannot just look at business sustainability through the lens of growth and revenue and numbers. That is one part of it. We have to look at, if my business is growing over here, what's the effect that it's going to have over there?
I just had this
go.
Okay. I just had this vision of being the woman at the head of the table and seeing self, all of those other parts
Yes.
of self around the table, as well as, you know, this a representative, which is also represented by the self of those different facets of
Yes.
one's life. And having that open conversation and dialogue with all parts of self about how do you feel about this and how do you feel about this, but really what we're asking ourselves is how do I feel about this?
You have the same vision. That's exactly how I see it. It's exactly how I see it. I see exactly the image that I work with. Is if I'm thinking about my own business growth and I'm thinking about the business model that I desire to have, and maybe the sales model that I desire to have, and the strategies that I want to use to execute on that, I want to ask that part of myself. I want to ask that child inside of me that is fearful of abandonment, how do you feel about this particular strategy? How does this land with you? Does this allow you to have some time to heal and some time to reconnect with yourself? And does this make you feel safe? Does this strategy make you feel safe? And a lot of the time what we try and do is we try and fix that child. We try and make her not fear the abandonment, not fear being left. That fear you have is wrong. You can't fear that. You're not allowed to fear that. So we're going to heal that so that we can do this over here in our business. Whereas I look at that and go, okay, that's a very real part of her experience. What if we don't make that wrong about her? What if we honor those fears? What if we honor the emotions that go with that? What if we honor, all of the experience that she's had? And what if we actually build a sales strategy that allows her to feel safe? And that again is a very radical way to look at business in the context of the personal development space as well, because the personal development space will tell you that her fear of abandonment has to be healed.
Yes.
In order for her to be successful, in order for you to be successful. And I think, no, let's actually build a business that supports that. Let's build a business that supports it, because there's going to be days where that little girl inside of you is triggered when something happens. That's a reality. That is just an absolute reality. That's part of your nervous system. It is wiring that's there. And it's a trigger that's very real. And we can have all of the tools to support that trigger and to support her to regulate her nervous system. And we use those, absolutely. But we've also, why build a business that's going to purposefully trigger that all the time when we can build something that makes her feel safe as well?
Yes.
Now, this is, in some respects, I see this as very advanced business because there is a fine line that we dance with this between also not letting the fear of abandonment control the things that we do, but it is a fine line that we get to walk, and that I think is important for us to walk, because I really truly and sick and tired of seeing in the personal development space her being made wrong. I'm sick and
Mm,
tired of seeing that her experience, that trauma that she had, is something that has to be healed in order for you
yes.
to be successful. And I
Yes.
do not, used to subscribe to that. And when I subscribed to that, that sent me on the path of feeling like I had to be healed and perfect in order to
Yes.
receive.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I truly believe now that the only mistake, if you want to call it that, that we've made is that we haven't set up a business that supports her at all.
Mm,
We've only set up a business that supports the healed version of her, the one that doesn't
mm,
fear abandonment, the one that doesn't fear rejection, the one that doesn't fear judgment, the one
yes.
that doesn't fear being alone. But they're all very natural and normal things that we all experience. We all have experienced traumas, and we will all
Mm,
experience traumas on different levels.
mm-hmm.
And this notion that we have to be healed from that
Mm,
in order to receive, success in our business is incredibly toxic and incredibly unhelpful.
mm,
And it's something I'm very passionate about changing and revolutionizing when it comes to success. And all we've got to do is just create things in our business, structures and models and systems in our business that allow her to feel like she's supported, that she is not constantly being triggered. Um,
yes.
Again, a very different way of looking at things. But
It
that to
really is.
me is how we build sustainability, because it's
Mm,
not sustainable. It is not realistic to expect and to have that part of us that's experienced those things to just push her to the side. It is
mm,
not, it's not something that we can do. It's not sustainable. You cannot, it is not something that we can sustain for long periods of time, because at some
mm.
point she is going to have an emotional experience, and we need to make sure that she is supported in the construct of our business too.
Yes, it makes me think about the unrealistic expectations as well, that we can heal all wounds, all past traumas, when in fact, in my experience, and many of the women that I've worked with over the years who have suffered significant trauma, uh, is that a lot of the time we can heal up to a certain point, but ultimately what we're looking for is an ability to accept, find self compassion, self kindness, and a way to move forward and live alongside of the pain, the
Mm-hmm.
trauma, the grief, the sadness. That we actually, in having this human experience as women, we actually experience the both and that we can be
Mm-hmm.
experiencing grief alongside of also thriving in our life. And that's something that I've really experienced over the last 4 or so years, that I would not have thought would be possible prior to moving through that embodied experience of grief myself. And I just hear that in what you're
Yeah.
speaking to in business as well.
Yeah, I love that you've touched on that. I know you talk so much about the and both, and I think that's
Mm,
such an important construct to really be able to lean into and play with as well. It's the true concept of dualities.
mm,
We do, and I think that's the piece that we've forgotten. I know for me, with emotional intelligence, at some point it became this very linear sort of process. It's like, but we've forgotten our ability to be able to experience multiple emotional experiences
mm,
in one moment. And I think we've all had that moment where something really sad has happened, and there's some sort of grief that may be happening, and someone makes a joke, and in that moment you're both laughing and crying at the same time. And I
yeah.
think that is an example of our ability to have the and both,
Mm,
and to not see that one is better than the other or one is higher than the other. That's one of the things that I grappled with for so long, and I see taught as well, which I believe when it comes, I going off on a bit of a tangent, I think, but hopefully it comes in. But one of the things I've been able to theorize is that manifestation, the whole concept of manifestation that's taught really on mass scale, is actually emotional manipulation.
Mm.
What we're trying to do is say, well, if I am this certain vibration, if I am thinking these thoughts and having this emotional experience, then I'm going to attract the thing that I want. It's going to happen.
Mm.
And that can be transferred over into business. And so it makes us very fearful of being low vibe and
Yes.
experiencing these dense emotions like grief and shame and guilt or even apathy. And I just think to myself, when did when did we get so lost in that, to believe that that's actually how creation works?
Yeah.
That it's almost like we're punished. It's almost like this sense of punishment. If you
Mm.
are experiencing shame, then you're going to be punished by not getting the thing that you want. You're going
Yes.
to get more things. And I think to myself, that can't, I had to do so much work in really um, rewriting my relationship with God. I grew up in a
Mm.
Catholic home. And so I was absolutely brought up under the guise of a God fear, like fearing God, and
Mm.
God was punishing. And I just think to myself, that's not a God that I want to believe in.
Yeah.
Whether it's God or universe or source or whatever your beliefs, really allow you to go to in terms of what word you use. I just think it doesn't, to me, that doesn't, that doesn't sit right with me. That
Mm.
God would be up there as co-creator with us saying, well, you're in shame right now. That's bad and wrong. Even though
Mm.
I've given you that emotional experience for you to be able to have, even though I've allowed you
Yes.
to, vibrate, that's wrong. And you, therefore, because of that, you are not allowed to have success in your business.
Mm.
You're not allowed to sell your latest program or your offer. And I just think that can't,
Mm.
to me, that doesn't sit right. And I choose not to believe in that. I choose to believe in the and both. I choose to believe that we can be in shame and actually have compassion for ourselves while we move through that. I
Yeah.
believe that we can be experiencing deep grief, and I have experienced a lot
Mm.
of grief in my lifetime, and that we can also experience immense joy in that, amongst that grief as well. I
Mm.
believe very deeply in the and both that you talk about.
Mm.
And I believe very deeply that the only reason in business that we don't receive, in the context of business, it's usually money and clients. We
Mm.
don't receive when we're in grief, we don't receive when we're in shame, is because we have actually set our business up to only thrive when we are in the air quote positive
Mm.
emotions. And so, if we allow, that's where the sustainability comes in, about accepting all of self. It has to be done through the lens of accepting all of self. Because if we don't accept all of ourselves and believe that all of ourselves is deserving of receiving, then of course we're not going to set our business up. Of course we're
Yes.
going to choose strategies and structures that require us to be switched on and upbeat and energized and always positive and high vibe all
Mm.
the time. Of
Mm.
course we're going to move towards those, instead of actually going, okay, that's a part of me, and I can have strategies in my business that are set up that are supportive of that. But what about when I am going through grief? What
Yeah.
about when I am experiencing some deep fears that are coming up? Is my let's just use sales as an example. Do I have strategies set up in my business to sell my offers when I'm grieving, and all I deeply desire at that point in time, and all my body is saying to me is lie on the lounge, hug your children, and just cry. Just cry.
Mm.
That's all you want. That's all your body just wants to move through that emotional release process.
Mm.
But if we don't have a strategy that's set up to support that, then of course of course we're going to run the narrative. I can only receive when I'm happy, because
Yes.
we actually haven't set our business up to actually receive when we are lying down having that moment. And that to me is the ultimate definition of sustainability. If your
Mm.
business is set up for you to be able to be in any nervous system state, having any emotional experience, and you can receive
Mm.
money and clients, and your business can serve and show up in the world
Mm.
while you are crying on the lounge because you've just lost someone dear to you. If your business is
Mm.
set up to do that, then I believe you have a sustainable business. But if
Mm.
you've set your business up that, because in a way that requires you to have to be on social media and be happy and upbeat and positive and sharing your message, and that's the only time that your business can make money, I do not believe you have a sustainable business. I actually believe you have a job if that's what you've set up. And that our focus then is on starting to change those. That is the ultimate for sustainability for me.
Yeah. And I think the challenge is that there's, and this is why these conversations and the work that we do is so important, is that there needs to be more conversations like this, because
Yes.
the narrative being run right now is that success looks a particular way, and that if you're not being
Yep.
productive and you're not on all of the time, then you're not going to be successful, and that it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard work. It's supposed to feel like a hard slog. That's just the way it's supposed to be. And when you speak about sustainability in business, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about how we actually need to, as women, set up our lives in the same way. We need to
Yes.
set up our lives to be able to take those moments of rest and pause. And
Mm,
you mentioned on one of your Instagram posts recently, I think it might have been in one of your podcast episodes, you spoke about how to make sales through rest and resilience, which
mm,
immediately for me cultivates this sense of ease in my body, because I'm thinking, oh, so I can rest, I can build the resilience to be able to rest, and I can still be successful. Can you speak more
yeah.
to that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of what I was saying before as well, is that I think first and foremost, like as you said, you heard that and you were like, oh, it's first and foremost, it's the awareness
Mm.
that, oh my goodness, that's something that I can actually desire. I
Mm.
actually want that.
And it's
That's
possible.
yeah. Well,
Mm.
it's possible. It becomes possible when we choose for it to be possible. I'm a
Mm.
really big believer in building a business with intention.
Mm.
Otherwise, we end up just being very reactionary. And when we're reactionary in our business, then we will always fall into our conditioned patterns, which is for a large majority of us, mission driven,
Mm.
ambitious women, is that we are very much used to just being on all the time. And so we set our businesses up that way. So the notion of I can make sales through rest, resilience, moments of pause, that's really interesting. All right, let me
Mm.
explore that. Is that a desire that I have? Is that a desire? And I think 99.9% of women, humans probably would say yes, that's actually something that I want to experience. And then it's got to be a choice. Okay, well, I'm going to have to choose that. I'm going to
Mm.
have to choose for that to be the case, because in order to choose that, and this is where I do a lot of work, I'm business strategist as well as a nervous system expert, is
Mm.
that there has to be the practical pursuit of that
Mm.
path.
Yeah.
It isn't something I say. It's one thing to desire this. When we desire that, it's beautiful, but that desire can honestly just a lot of the time live as a fantasy.
Mm.
What we have to do is we have to then take and make that an intention and actually start to set our business up, and we have to choose structures and strategies and paths that actually support that to be a reality.
Mm.
But in order to do that, I don't, the concept of easy and hard, I grapple with a lot. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that there are necessary moments of struggle. I
Mm.
think there are, and human design tells us that. Human design is one of the reasons I love human design, is it just puts
Mm.
this really beautiful spin on some of these things that we're so averse to. But there is a particular channel. It's the channel of struggle, actually, in human design. It's the 28-38 combination. And I work with actually quite a few women that have this particular channel, at least some of it. I wonder if you do, actually.
I was just about to ask, you've seen my chart. Does it have
I
it?
know, I can't remember. I can't remember off the top of my head whether you do or not. But one of the things that I love about that particular channel is it talks about entering into the right struggles, that there are going to be
Mm.
struggles in life, and it's just about responding to and entering into aligned struggles. And I
Mm.
have a saying in business, and I say setting your business up for ease will be the hardest thing you ever do. And I
Mm.
do believe that. I honestly do believe that. And I don't believe in terms of hard, as in I've got to work really, really hard for it. I just mean in terms of resistance. You're going
Yeah.
to experience very natural resistance because we're not wired for ease,
Mm.
particularly as women, as you say. I have an entire theory. I truly believe that, feminism did beautiful things for equal rights for women, but what it did was actually turned us into men
Mm,
operating in men's world instead of working out how we as women could actually make the world fit us instead of us trying
yeah,
to fit into the world.
yeah.
And so I truly believe this concept of, ease is something that is a challenge for a lot of us women because we wear strong as a badge of honor.
Mm,
And, ease for a lot of us feels very, very vulnerable. But
yeah.
when it comes to easy and hard, I look at it through the lens of, is this something that is worth a struggle for me? Am I going to enter into something here that there's going to be some resistance when it comes
Mm,
to setting up
mm,
ease in our business?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that concept of ease in terms of being able to make sales, whether we're in rest resilience or whether we're switched on and going in our business, is actually a very challenging thing to do, not because the
Mm,
practicality of is hard. It's actually
mm,
not. The actual
mm,
practical strategies that we need to put in place to actually create that in the business is actually not complex. It's not
yes.
hard.
Mm,
Okay, but we're going to experience resistance. Our
yeah.
body is inbuilt for resistance to change. And so if we're very wired to have to be on all the time in order to make sales and to
Mm,
serve our clients and to do all of those things, then going into something and creating something that is so easeful and allows us spaciousness is going to bring up some resistance. And we absolutely need to know how to work through that, not
mm,
push through it, because that's what we're inclined to do, not treat it as a block, but actually learn
mm,
how to guide our body and meet our body in that very natural resistance, very compassionately connecting with it. And when we do, we will be able to set those things up for ourselves. But
mm.
I really believe the generation of you and I in business, we're bridge builders.
Yeah,
And we really are here. We're currently building that bridge from the air quote old way
yeah.
to the new way. And that just requires that we have the desire and also the intentional choice to support that
Mm,
desire.
yeah. I think when you mention about feminism, I think, like you say, it's been really powerful in in allowing women to have a seat at the table. And I think
Yes.
now the work is to come back to that homeostasis, to come back to that point of grounding where we are able to have the both and the masculine and the feminine come together now to move forward, where the female, the woman, is able to lean into that feminine essence because the push, the action taking has happened now. And so now
Mm.
it's about this feminist movement. It's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it's about
No.
now using that as the foundation to now find that happy medium. So I think that's, really important. And this idea of reworking business in a way that is sustainable and a way that really harnesses the feminine and all of these aspects of self is just such an important aspect to your work and being the trail blazer and the leader that you are. So I just want to thank you for being that, and thank you for all of the beautiful work that you do, and wondering what you've got happening in your world right now, where people can come to find you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reflecting that back to me. It's I've always believed that whatever I've gone through is going to be for greater good. And I know that the challenges that I went through in 2020 and 21 and 22 particularly have always been building towards something. And it's really this moment in time and everything that I'm leading right here and now. So for me, if people want to come and connect into my world, the best place to do that, I have a private free Facebook community where I am doing live trainings every week. And that is really the best place to come. And that's called
Mm-hmm.
Body Led Business Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And inside there, it's really just a community that I'm cultivating to really lead people into this awareness of this new way is really what this is about. So if the conversation that we've had today piques your interest and you really feel like this is a path that you would like to go down, that you want to bring your body into your business. You want business not just to be about filling up your bank account, but really about feeling right and good in your body. And fulfillment is something that you really deeply want to prioritize, but also that you don't want to have to sacrifice on that part of you that really feels that deeper purpose and mission to serve in a greater way through your business, then that Facebook community would really be perfect for you. So that's really the best place. I do have a podcast, the Success Revolution podcast, where I'm having those conversations. So both of those places are really beautiful connection points, and you're invited to walk into my world at any time.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. This is a beautiful conversation. I'm
My
so
pleasure.
grateful.